Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to break down some of our foundational principles as it pertains to breathing. Now you might be thinking, hey Chris, I breathe all day long. Why do I have to learn about breathing? Well, the short answer is that we have gotten so far away of actually being relaxed in our lifestyle with our high-paced jobs, our stress, everything else. We have become very shallow breathers and we are forcing our body into a constant sympathetic or fight or flight mode. Breathing is that key that both helps us focus our mind, it helps us to focus our clarity, and it's a way to bring our bodies back down to that parasympathetic state or of a more relaxed state so that we can actually train to higher levels. Now, there's going to be times where I'm going to teach you to brace in your breathing, like if you're doing a heavy squat, a heavy deadlift. There's other times where I want you to breathe more normally because I want you to get that respiration correct. So I want to dispel a couple myths, and especially now that you're seeing so many quote unquote breathing gurus, from the Wim Hof method to all sorts of things, from underwater people to XPT to, and here's the cool thing, they all have something to teach. However, sometimes they become such gurus in their own right that it's like it's their only way of teaching, or they don't understand that different ways of breathing is nothing more than a tool in your toolbox. Just like I could easily give you 50 different squat variations based on the attribute that we're trying to achieve, we want to practice different breathing styles based on, again, the attribute we're going for in the given lift. Are we trying to get relaxed? Am I trying to brace? Am I actually trying to bring my heart rate up? Am I trying to do all sorts of things? Do I need to calm my mind? Do I need to focus? These are all things that we want to bring into the discussion as it pertains to breathing. And one last thing, again, the foundation of my program is breathe, sit, stand, walk. If you can master these 4 things and you're thinking, Chris, I do all these things all the time. Well, you'd be surprised at how many breathing lessons I give, how many gait and walking lessons, because if you can't walk correctly, you're definitely not going to run and sprint correctly. Sitting to standing, how many people can't squat correctly? Again, if you've watched my squat tutorial, you heard this. So these foundational matters are very important. So let's go ahead and dive into what I mean when we're going to talk about some of our breathing techniques. All right, first myth that I want to talk about is belly breathing. A lot of people have already been preaching and hearing, hey, we got to get away from this upper respiratory chest kind of stress breathing that causes scalenes to tighten up because it's pulling up your rib cage, tightening up your neck, causing other issues, especially because we're down on our phones and computers all day with our head down. So again, these scalene muscles tighten up. Getting out of our chest, or what we call stress breathing, and getting back down into our more diaphragmatic breathing, let's dispel this myth first. Because belly breathing, as it's taught a lot of times, is just kind of pushing out your gut right here and breathing. Okay, that is not exactly what we want to be doing in terms of both diaphragmatic breathing and the appropriate way to brace in our heavy exercises like our deadlift, our squat, even our bench press, where we want to actually take in a big breath to support our spine with intra-abdominal pressure so that we create a nice 2x4 within that spine. So yes, for a lot of people who have only been shallow chest breathing for a long time, even getting in that breath down here into the belly is a challenge. So let's talk about a very quick way to just work on that. The simplest way is if I take any kind of weight, I could take a ball, anything, and if I just lie down where I can relax. So if I lie in this position here and I place that weight on my gut, the first thing I want to do before I inhale is actually exhale. So if I blow all of this wind out and think about pushing my belly button into my spine, now I have room to breathe in, and when I do, this weight should rise up. If I exhale, that weight pushes it out. Inhale, exhale. So this teaches you how to actually fill that belly with air. And why is that important? So understand the diaphragm is a muscle that sits underneath your lungs, and when it actually contracts, it drops down, thereby filling up space and creating a negative pressure vacuum. So think about like a balloon that's underneath water, and that water's putting pressure, but as that balloon comes up out of the water, there's less pressure, so the balloon can now expand. So as the diaphragm goes down, it creates a negative pressure in your chest cavity, if you will. And so with that, the lungs can expand and fill up. So if I exhale fully, pushing out all the air, and then I just relax, immediately there's almost a half a breath in just from relaxation. So understand, you exhale with abdominal muscles pressing that diaphragm in and up, which expels the air. But then as I breathe in, the diaphragm relaxes, it drops down, allowing more air to get into the lungs. Now, a little bit of a lung anatomy. In the bottom of the lungs, where the transfer of oxygen happens, there's also a level of what we call residual air volume that doesn't really get a lot of air transfer. So think of it as more like stagnant air in your lungs. If I really push hard, pushing my belly button, my spine, and there's other breathing techniques I'm gonna go over to do that, that's gonna kind of move some of that residual air out, which then allows me to expand and take a bigger breath of air in. Now, on a quick side note, when you go and do, let's say like a sprint, or you run upstairs and you get winded, in that moment, it's not that your body needs more oxygen, you just produce a little bit more carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide, which is acidic, changes your pH in your blood. Why is that important? Well, the shift of both oxygen attaching to what's called hemoglobin in your blood, which happens at the lungs, then that red blood vessel goes through your circulatory system to, let's say, your muscles that need it. But then there's a acidic balance in which it allows the breaking apart of the hemoglobin and thereby the oxygen from the blood cell, so it can actually be transported into the tissue that needs the oxygen. So your pH in your blood is very dependent and very controlled based upon, are we trying to get air in or release air? So the more acidic you are, the more it signals your brain to say, I want more oxygen in to get that pH back to normal. So therefore, like if you were to swim underwater and if you pass out and if all of a sudden the body goes, I need air, now you take in a breath of air, but you're taking in water, that's how you can drown. But as you're swimming underneath the water and you're using muscles, then guess what? Your pH is going more and more and more acidic, which then signals to say, I want to take a breath of air. So why this is important is that if I'm not pushing a lot of residual volume and I'm not getting good oxygen transfer, I'm not actually able to change some of the pH, and my what's called oxygen saturation could be lower than necessary. All right, so these are all health reasons, and then we're gonna talk about the reasons to focus. But the start of that, again, is learning that belly breath. But here's the problem with just belly breathing, especially as it pertains to bracing in the squat, the deadlift. Remember, your spine's kind of in the middle, and I wanna create pressure all around it. So picture a toddler that you're getting ready to chuck into a pool, can't swim, but you put a floaty on them. Now imagine you put a floaty on, but you only blew up the front part of the floaty, you chuck the kid in the water, what happens? He topples over. To get him to not topple over, you would have to blow up the floaty entirely around him to support him vertically. That's our spine. So I can't just breathe here into my gut, I also have to breathe here into my sides, and even here into my back, where you can see I can push my thumbs out in all 360-degree directions. But that takes muscles, and that takes focus, and that takes training to be able to do that. So I'm gonna give you a little plug here. So my buddy Jesse, who's a former NFL guy, created what's called the breath belt. So I carry these, and this is something that I've been using now since year 2000. And ever since then, I've actually stopped wearing lifting belts. And the reason why is because this is a design belt that has a lot of support, but it has some elasticity to it, so that as I put this on, I can actually compress my diaphragm right here on all 360 degrees. Now, we wear it both as an SI belt, but it's also a breathing tool, because you can see I've got it on tight like a corset, and it gives me immediate feedback where as I breathe in, instead of up here, if I think about trying to expand this, you can see how I'm pushing and expanding this belt out. And it's not just here, I'm expanding the sides. And most importantly, because again, a lot of people don't have the kinesthetic awareness to feel your breath literally expanding the back, but hopefully from the video, you can see that right there. I'm literally pushing the belt out. But because it's compressing me, it's like a resistance training device for breathing. Most of my athletes, I remember when I had Von Miller doing this for the first time, he loved it because he felt his back supported, felt really good. So he started wearing it, driving around. He's like, man, Chris, after like 4 minutes, I had to take it off. Well, why? Because these muscles are muscles like any other muscle and they need to be trained. So because he hadn't trained them yet, those muscles were fatiguing. So after a while, he was back to his chest breathing because he no longer could expand. So there's ways that which we wear these, where we do a set and I literally take it back off, and it's got some pockets in here and stuff where I can put in, let's say like a lacrosse ball or something. So if I need that feel of where is that spot and I can press that ball out, it's a really great breathing tool. So yes, plug for the breath belt. However, I'm showing you what it looks like to breathe 360 degrees to support your spine. So this is what I mean when I say take that good breath in right before we pick up the bar in the squat, before I bench press, all these kind of things where I'm trying to create rigidity and protect my spine. Now the last part of this is notice how when I breathe in, I like to breathe in through my nose. That allows me to really fill and feel. If I breathe in through my mouth, it's just not quite the same. It's too fast. Whereas if I breathe in slower through my nose, I can feel and direct the air. Now exhale is a little bit different. And again, it's not that exhaling through the nose or the mouth is about right or wrong. Again, it's about what attribute I'm trying to do. So if I breathe in and I want to have a slow, controlled breath, I can breathe out through my nose, slow the tempo down because again, my nose is a smaller opening than my mouth, but that's more when I'm trying to be very relaxed. Now, if I'm trying to blow off carbon dioxide, like if I just got done sprinting and I'm trying to get my heart rate back down, I might be, why? Because I'm blowing off a ton of carbon dioxide because I'm moving a lot of air, which then drops, actually does the opposite. So acidity drops your pH. By blowing acidity off, carbon dioxide off, you're actually raising, making yourself more alkaline. And that's how if you hyperventilate like the Wim Hof method, right? You get lightheaded because you're blowing off so much carbon dioxide. Now it's different if I'm just sitting here versus doing that and then getting ready to go exert yourself. That's why swimmers, a lot of time for underwater, they'll hyperventilate because they're raising their pH and then they can swim underwater. The danger, of course, with that is that if you trick your mind into being so alkaline, your need for oxygen gets there, and that's one of the reasons why people might pass out before actually going up to take a breath of air. So I'm not going to get into the advanced training and actually like the free divers and stuff and big wave surfers. They are absolutely amazing at their breath control, how much they can hold their breath and stay underwater for a long time and still stay relaxed while they're moving. So again, if I'm now walking outside, I like to try to breathe through my nose as much as possible, both inhale and exhale, because I want to maintain that nice aerobic base. Another good cue is, can you maintain a conversation? So if I'm exerting myself and I can have a conversation without, without getting winded, then I know I'm utilizing oxygen very well and I'm staying in that, zone 1, zone 2 type aerobic fitness. So again, nose breathing is a lot more for controlling, relaxation, and again for focus. So my next point about breathing is there are so many times where an individual will be doing an exercise and the exercise becomes challenging, so they will naturally hold their breath or grunt or scrunch their face. But in reality, if it is a submaximal exercise, if I'm just doing basic bicep curls, let's say for a set of 10, I'm gonna feel it in my arms and I don't need a lot of extra oxygen. So I don't need to be, and I definitely don't need to be scrunching my face or creating more tension unnecessarily in my body. So my point of this is that a lot of breathing a lot of these ancillary things like changing up breathing, scrunching your face, holding your breath, they're not physical. It's purely an emotional response, which most coaches have never even made the connection, let alone talked about or coached, because there's times where, like when I was doing pull-ups the other day and I got to my last few reps and my body's like, oh, this is hard. And you get to that point where you feel like I can't do anymore. I usually will pause, take a breath, so I can relax, focus, and get my muscles back to that good relaxation where I can actually utilize them. But if I'm tense and holding on, a lot of times you just gas out before your body's truly able to get those last few reps. So breathing and controlling and being able to separate what is an emotional response from a physical response is very important. Now, single rep max effort deadlift, very different. I'm gonna support my spine, which means I'm gonna take in that breath and I'm gonna hold that breath in, which is what we call bracing, to brace the spine until I'm done with lifting and putting down that rep. Very different attribute, because now I'm trying to move a maximal force, a maximal weight. But if I'm just going for a walk, or I'm doing bicep curls or pull-ups or dips or push-ups, I want to breathe. If I hold my breath, I'm gonna increase that CO2 production, I'm gonna drop my pH, and it's gonna burn me out faster than if I maintain the breathing. Especially when we get into our iso extremes, that you're holding positions for 1 minute up to 5 minutes, you'll see the shift when your breathing shifts. So the longer I can stay more parasympathetic and relaxed, my muscles stay more relaxed, I can absorb more force, and I can actually go longer from an endurance standpoint because I'm not tensing the entire time. It's like watching little kids wrestle like this versus like Olympic wrestlers that can flow and be relaxed. And so therefore, when it's time to explode, bam, there they go. And they know how to regulate between being explosive versus being relaxed, and that's why they don't gas out as much compared to kids that are doing this the entire time, and they're exhausted, and they're not even producing a fraction of the same force. So that's why all this is important. Okay, let's go back to more breathing. So we've talked about belly breathing with the weights to learn how to get out of our chest into the belly. Then I talked about compression, 360 degrees, so that now when I breathe in, it's not really this where I pooch out, but it's really this, 360 degrees. That's gonna be the primary start. And as you breathe, even throughout the day, if you're sitting at your desk and you notice, I'm getting stressed, a lot of times you'll notice by getting headaches, it's because you're actually starting to hold your breath and you're breathing very shallow and you're actually creating more acidity and your brain is not getting oxygen because you're not circulating. You'd be surprised if you start to get a tension headache, if you just get up, go hold a 3-minute iso squat while breathing deep. The iso squat's gonna circulate blood because you're using your muscles. As you breathe, you're oxygenating your blood. It's amazing how fast you can make something as simple as a headache go away in 3 minutes time just from that. Now, full breath, the full capacity of the lungs, needs to start from the bottom and work its way up. So if I have a cup and I'm pouring water into the cup, it fills up the bottom first, kind of hits the sides, and then comes up. Now, if I took that same cup and I took a smaller cup and pressed water down, what does it do? It presses down and then it kind of shoots up the sides. So that's gonna be my more violent breath. So either way, I'm gonna fill up this first here, and then it goes chest. And at the very last, if I really need that extra bit, that's when I get that upper breath where again, so my intercostals, they're your rib muscles, the muscles between your ribs, they contract to pull the rib cage away here, which again creates more space for the lungs to expand. And then your scalenes and maybe some of your traps and stuff, they lift the collarbone so that I can breathe way up here. But again, a lot of people with their stress, they're way up here and they wonder why they have neck issues and tension and they get ribs out and their back hurts because they're all up here. That's the last place the breath should be. But first should be down here, 360 degrees, here, then the ribs, then at the very least, here. So don't get it out of order. Be able to differentiate and practice that. And unless you're full on, let's say, sprinting, you really don't need up here. So keep those shoulders relaxed. Keep those shoulders back and down. If I'm shrugging, if I'm tense, everyone is so tense up here all the time. Tension, tension, neck, neck. Breathing up here. You can physically see the difference in how that, I could feel it in my body go to more of a sympathetic, like I'm ready to fight, as opposed to drop the shoulders, sit up, breathe low. You can see the countenance of my physical body change when I do that. All right, let's put this all together. First, learn how to belly breathe. Separate it from the chest and from the upper scalenes. After you get belly, work 360 degrees, obliques and back into your QLs. So I can wear that corset and I can expand. That's gonna be your power breath, that's your bracing, and that is where you should be doing most of your breathing when you're in a relaxed state or trying to get back to a relaxed state. Next, after I fully fill here, now I can bring my chest and make sure we're sitting up tall so that this is the very, very, very last thing, if at all. When I exhale, again, I'm gonna do the opposite. Drop, ribs, belly button, into my spine to exhale. Now, if you really wanna get in that residual, when you think I've fully exhaled, so if I breathe in, fully exhale, now there's still a little bit left, so I can purse my lips, almost like you're shooting spit wads. And every time I'm trying to push my belly button in, I'm gonna get out a little bit more air. Plus it's a great, we call it yoga abs, an ab exercise to control here. And then you start your breath in by purely relaxing and then following lower, middle, higher breath back up. This is the breathing principles I really want you to work on as the foundational basics. If you can focus on your breath, you can separate the emotions from what's physically hard, and we can learn how more to recover from, let's say, high exertion like sprint training, a high cardio, running up a hill, those types of things. So I'll get into more of that down the road, but this is plenty to get you started. And most importantly, when you go into your lifting, especially your heavy lifts, now you know how to brace all the way around 360 degrees. So give that a shot, work on that.